love is a commitment. Real love is a fierce commitment to serving not their ego needs. Real love is a commitment to serving your friends, your loved one's soul. It's a commitment to serve their soul. And so by you growing, by you evolving, by you expanding yourself, I believe will also force those around you to grow and evolve, even though it might be uncomfortable. Sometimes growth isn't convenient. Sometimes growth can be painful and challenging. And so by you growing and evolving and having that commitment, and also to do it lovingly, with compassion, with kindness, will force those around.
The best investment you can make is in yourself. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The best time you can spend is bettering yourself, because if you better yourself, you're going to be better for everyone else. Mm-hmm. It's all connected, and if you center yourself here first and put in the work, which is the hard part.
The hard part, yeah.
It's the hard part. It's easy to then just go and kick it with your friends and to do nothing. Mm-hmm. But if you spend that time alone reading, or you spend that time in ashrams, or you spend that time just doing the work, whatever that looks like, but going and doing the work, and that's selfish. You're pulling yourself away from your group of friends.
Yeah.
But that's what's going to then affect the world and yourself so much higher in a better way.
It's just kind of, like you said, flipping to the other side of the coin. Instead of saying, I'm going to stay home and have these toxic thoughts and do these unconventional and unhealthy actions and hurt people. Instead, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to work on myself and meditate and read and pray and do all these different things to help me grow, which again, like you said, are also selfish actions. Actions we're deciding to do for ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. It's a transformation process where it isn't. You either emerge out of the dark nights or you die. And plenty of people do. So it is actually mirroring implementation. It's just most of us, this is why we get into the dark night of the soul. Most of us don't have the awareness that we're taking action through separation. So I kind of described that earlier. The person who's going for fame in order to get away from their insignificance, instead of to integrate their insignificance, will hit a point where fame, through their insecurity of fame, means that they will feel less significant than at any other point in their life. So that's the dark night.
You should never say yes to something out of a sense of duty, obligation, or guilt. If those are the things you feel that are motivating you to say yes, it's only ever going to lead to negative consequences and an intense amount of internal stress. And remember that the better you get at saying no, the easier it gets to say no. It is much easier to not commit to something than to say yes and then take it back later. But it must be said that to follow through on something you've committed to that you don't actually want to do, that you wanted to say no to, is self-sabotage. It comes from a space of self-hatred. An easy technique you can apply if you're a yes person is the technique of delaying your answer. It's very hard when you've been living a life of practicing the art of saying yes, to suddenly switch and be able to say no with no amount of guilt. In fact, your knee-jerk reaction might be just to say yes and not even check in with how you feel about what you've been asked to do. So the best thing to do is to come up with a key phrase that you train yourself to say in the spot of where you would normally say yes. One of the best phrases I found is, "Let me get back to you." Listen to your heart, separate of the pressure of that person wanting an answer from you. You can listen to your heart in terms of whether you want to say yes or no. Remember that the need to take care of yourself and the desire to be happy are valid reasons to say no to something. You can offer an explanation to someone for why you are saying no to something, but remember that you do not need to justify your decision. It is not your responsibility to make someone else happy. And the people who base their relationship with you off of how much you do for them are not friends anyway. They are using you as a substitute for making themselves happy. And put yourself in other people's shoes. If the people who surround you do actually love you and you put yourself in their shoes, does it actually feel good to you when you say yes to something you don't actually want to do? We all know inside the answer is no. It sucks to have other people do things for us that they don't actually want to do. If you want to offer an explanation as to why you are saying no, one of the best ways to do that is to make it about yourself. See, the people who want you to say yes to them need validation. That's what they get out of you saying yes, and validation feels like love. So you saying no to them feels like you not loving them, which is why they will continue to pressure you over and over again to get the answer yes. Again, to get the answer yes. When you make it about yourself, you take the pressure off of them, and you're not invalidating them. Be prepared to stick with your answer of no, again and again. You may have to repeat it several times. A good way to deflect this, because what people who want yes from you are actually after is your validation in the form of love, is to give them some kind of validation before you say no. For example, let's say you get invited to a party. Give them a validation about the party. "Oh, wow, that will be great. I'm really, really thinking that it'll be an awesome party. I think you guys will have a lot of fun. But I have to do something else that night. Or I feel like I've been going to too many things lately, and I really feel like I need to take some time for myself." The fact that you've given them that little bit of validation ahead of saying no means that you've given them enough validation that when you back out of it, they're not going to take it personally and not see it as a reason to reject you, because in their minds, you've rejected them. It's really important to remind you, though, that this is not a good time to lie. So in the previous example that I gave, if you don't actually think it's going to be a good party, don't tell them, oh, I'm sure that'd be a great party, I just don't want to go. Because in reality, what you're thinking is, that's going to be a really crappy party to go to. But I want you to have the faith in yourself that you can look at that situation where you want to say no to, and you can find something to appreciate about it. That's the thing you want to validate, rather than lying to yourself or the other person about something you don't actually have appreciation for. If you find that you're surrounded by someone who's particularly bent on getting you to say yes to them, now would be a good time to remind them that they don't actually want to be surrounded by people who do things they don't want to do. That's a horrible feeling. It feels kind of like you're dragging everyone by the neck. It's also a good time to remind them that you're committed enough to having a good relationship with them, that you want that relationship to be based on genuine feeling, that you don't want to build the relationship on a foundation of self-sacrifice. Often, no one in our lives is even asking us to sacrifice ourselves. We simply volunteer to do it. We fall into the role of martyr by committing to things that we know in our heart we don't actually want to do, without even being asked to do them. For example, we know we don't have time to add one more project to our already full schedule, but we offer to do the project anyway. Or we know it doesn't feel good to offer someone the opportunity to live with us, but we offer them a place to stay anyway, even though they did not even expect it and they did not even ask to stay with us. When we do this, we feel the temporary high of self-esteem because we feel like we're a good person, but this feeling quickly gives way to a feeling of dread. We feel put upon by the person when they didn't even put anything upon us. We did ourselves. We threw ourselves under the bus, so to speak. We do it for 4 main reasons. The first is because we want to prevent ourselves from experiencing the pain of watching other people experience pain. The second is because we want to do what we believe is right. The third is to avoid the feeling guilty or selfish. And the fourth is to maintain a connection with other people to prevent them from abandoning us. We meet the needs of others at the expense of our own needs. On the surface, we often appear content to self-sacrifice, but underneath we feel a deep sense of emotional deprivation, which leads to anger and resentment towards the object of our sacrifice. Often we believe and express to others that we do not expect or need anything back from them, but when the other person does not show appreciation or does not reciprocate in some way, we feel resentful, that we are stuck. We have built our identities around altruism and helping others. We think we can't stop now even if it feels bad to do what we're doing. Because we are convinced if we do it any other way, we are a bad person. We are in a no-win situation. There comes a point when we must face the reality that we have needs that are not being met, even though we may not be aware of them yet. And what's more, we deserve to get our needs met just as much as anyone else does. Most of us who are dedicated yes people don't actually help people like we think we do. It's a substitute for true self-worth. That's what we're getting out of it. It may be stressful, but at least if they're weak and I help them, I can be strong. At least if I'm the one that says yes and I'm the one who does everything, I can exaggerate my belief that I'm a worthwhile person. This is a flawed perception. We do have worth, but it's separate from what we do from others, and it should not be compared to what other people can or cannot do. And other people will find a way to get what they need. Their expansion is being served by lining up with their desires. They will figure out how to line up with those desires one way or another. The only reason you should ever help them is because it feels emotionally good for you to help them. Do you want to know how to know if it feels emotionally good? You will not need them to say thank you. All you do when you focus on somebody's inability to do something is focus on their weakness and reinforce their weakness. If you love them, you could not focus at them in this way. If we can say no to our momentary urge to self-sacrifice, then it will be easier to say no to the things that we don't actually want to do that are going to create the greatest amount of stress in our lives. If you are self-sacrificing, as most stress in our lives, if you are self-sacrificing, as most people who say yes all the time are, then you are trying to get something by saying yes to everything. And when you're in a space of clarity, enough to look at that, then it's time to see what need you're trying to get out of the self-sacrifice. You want to ask yourself this question. What is it that I was trying to get as a result of the self-sacrifice I was about to commit? And when you find that answer, you can ask yourself, how can I give that to myself? There are 2 ways to say no. The first way to say no is to say no from the place of resisting something that is unwanted. The second way to say no is to say it so as to allow yourself to go in the direction of what is wanted. Your own happiness, to be specific. If we say no because we are resisting something, we are bringing that thing that we're resisting all the closer. This is the more traditional use of the word no. But if we are saying no from a space of wanting ourselves to flow in the direction of our own desires, then we are opening the space in our lives for our desires to come closer to us. The universe does not care what word you use. The universe is not responding to the word no. It is responding to how you feel when you say the word no. We can use the word no to represent our resistance to something, or we can use the word no to represent the allowing of ourselves to go in the direction of what we want. This is the kind of no we want to use. So let's stop the cycle. Saying no does not make you selfish. Saying no is not going to guarantee that you will be rejected. You're not going to lose opportunities. You'll have to reassess your boundaries because your feelings relative to what you want to do and not do are going to change. Allow this to happen. Your boundaries will change throughout your life. But it's very important that as your boundaries change, they change according to your feelings, not according to how other people think you should feel or change. We can rehabilitate each other relative to boundaries as well. And it's very easy. Just remember this. Whenever you're in a conversation with someone, stop and tell them that you want them to tell you exactly how they feel without being afraid of how you're going to respond. Reassure them that what you really want is for them to stay in alignment with how they truly feel and what they This gives them permission to be themselves and to actually define their boundaries when they're in your presence. Think about what kind of world this would be if we were all giving each other this kind of permission, instead of walking around trying to tell other people what their boundaries should and shouldn't be. The bottom line is, if we want to live happy lives and make the right choices for ourselves personally, we need to know how we feel, admit to how we feel, and express how we feel. Developing boundaries is a crucial part of finding our true selves. It is therefore a crucial part of spiritual practice and life success. We do not need to resist others to do it. Instead, we need to fully allow ourselves and to express the truth of ourselves at all times. As I said before, defining boundaries can be complicated until you simplify it and understand that your boundaries are always reflected by virtue of how you feel. Your boundaries are no different than how you feel. If you feel like doing something, then do it, and you are not violating a boundary. If you feel like not doing something and you do it, you are violating a boundary. It is as simple as that. As a spiritual luminary, my job is to offer to you some advice for how to live a life which you enjoy living. And my number one suggestion is to follow happiness, which is the same as following how you feel. You can't deny who you truly are. You can't deny who you truly want. You can't deny your feelings without also experiencing a decrease in your level of happiness. So the more in alignment you are with your personal truth, and the more you honor your feelings, the happier you will be. It is my ultimate promise. Have a good week.
How you speak has the capacity to affect your psyche greatly. And whatever your psyche is affected by, your entire biology is affected by. Therefore, we can make a very simple change, which does a lot actually, and that's anytime we are about to say have to, switch it to want to. Now, for those of you that are worried this is inauthentic, it is. Kind of. Let me explain. This is going to mess with your brain. It'll make you become conscious of the ways you're in opposition to your own sense of free will and why you are in that state of opposition. You will be forced to face your actual feelings about the things you're doing in your life. You'll be forced to acknowledge the truth within the universe that nothing is a have to. It's also easier to feel and recognize the parts of you that aren't on board with what you are doing. If you're choosing to do something that you feel is a have to, say I want to, and ask yourself why. Why am I doing it?
I'm going to share with you 7 signs that you are going through the hermit phase of your spiritual awakening process. This is something I've personally gone through, and it was one of the most lonely times of my entire awakening journey. At this time, I could really use a pep talk. I could really use some reassurance and some confirmation that the choices I was making, the experiences I was having, and the changes I was creating in my life were right for me because they seemed so unusual and out of character, even to myself. And if by the end of the video you feel that you resonate with this and you say, oh, thank goodness, it's just the hermit phase of awakening, that's all it is, then beyond that, I'll tell you what to do. If this is the case, if you are in the hermit phase of awakening, towards the end of the video, I'll tell you what you can do while in it. Okay? But first, let's just make sure you're not going crazy. And this video will hopefully remind you of what you're already telling yourself, which is, no, I'm not going crazy. I'm just waking up. I'm just blossoming. I'm just going through a pretty important and profound transformation at this time. Number 1 is right now you're feeling extra sensitive to people, places, busy, racy energy, and especially negativity of any kind. Negative energy, whether it's in a dark way or just sort of becoming aware of something bad that's taking place on the planet, it is like affecting your body, affecting you physically, sticking with you, and you feel right now kind of cracked open, very sensitive. And as this happens, it's very common to feel like you're overly sensitive to your own detriment, like you don't maybe want to go out very much. I remember one of the times, it's kind of funny, where I really noticed this the most was earlier in my own hermit phase, was when I had to go to the Apple store to get a laptop or something. I forgot why, but it was like back in 2011 or so. I went to the Apple store where there's 50 or so computer devices, 8 to 10 sort of overly caffeinated Apple people, and just busy, crowded people waiting in line. And it was like, I felt like I was storming the beach of Normandy. Not to minimize what that is. It's sort of a joke, a facetious metaphor. But it felt intense to me. I felt like, man, even though I drove all the way up here, even though I need to get this thing fixed, even though I'm almost up in line, I contemplated just booking out of there, just sort of running out of the mall. It seemed like a great idea at the time, but when I got there, it was intense. It's just a store. It's just a store. Vic, what are you talking about? Well, I was in my hermit phase. I was cracked open. It was a time to go within. And therefore, it's very common to feel overly stimulated by your surroundings. It's okay, it's normal, and it's temporary, and it serves you big time. Big time. Number 2 is you're spending more time alone, or you know you should be. This is a time to go within. Most people, including myself, including probably everyone watching this, at some point in their life, usually for most of their life, has gotten sort of swept away with the endless to-do list of life. There's always stuff. Our plate is almost always overloaded with stuff involving the external. We go to school, we get a job, we have bills, we have responsibility, we have lawns to cut, weeds to pull, people, obligations, there's all this doing. The hermit phase is saying, listen, You're so sensitive right now. We're hoping that you honor that and you come in to you and give yourself some much needed attention, some much needed focus, and some much needed rest. And even more importantly, some much needed love. We tend to neglect ourselves and live sort of in the external. The hermit phase is saying, listen, I don't care what you've been doing. It's not healthy. It's not going to lead to you being happy and fulfilled. Don't you want to be on your deathbed and look back and say, I was happy. I lived a great and fulfilling life. If we don't honor and love ourselves and give ourselves attention, even if it's unconventional, even if people don't understand why you're doing this and taking so much time for yourself, we're not going to be happy. And there's a part of you, a deeper part of you waking up to that realization. And that's why you probably feel naturally just magnetized and drawn within. It's very common for this time of the awakening where people are working less. I didn't even have a job at the time. Just my life arranged itself where I was not working. And I moved out of my home state, so I didn't have my familiar friends and family, my circle. So just me and my wife and my daughter, my dogs, and it was just a lot of much needed me time. Number 3 is you, guarantee this is going on if you're in the hermit phase, you have an insatiable appetite for anything spiritual content, metaphysics. You probably are wondering, am I spending an unhealthy amount of time watching YouTube videos and reading blogs and buying books on Amazon and nothing else seems important at this time? And you're probably even surprised at some of the things you're falling into, some of the information that's finding its way into your lap synchronistically. Even more so, you might find it surprising just the nature of what you're reading, how out there and how different it is, and yet it's resonating with you. There's a party that says, yes, I don't know why, it doesn't make sense, but yeah, this is maybe the deepest truth I've ever come across, and yet it's so strange to my mind and all the concepts and beliefs I've been walking through life with. How could I do anything else? This is all I want to do, is pry open and dive into Pandora's box and just go down that rabbit hole further and further and further because it's exciting. It's just exciting. That's all you probably want to do right now. It's probably late at night right now, and there's like your 14th YouTube video. You know you should get to bed, but you just can't stop it. Number 4, things that once satisfied you, piqued your interest, and fulfilled you, no longer do. This could be hobbies. Maybe you played soccer your whole life, and all of a sudden you just don't feel like going out and playing soccer. You feel like you should. Like maybe you're wondering, why do I not want to play soccer? I thought I loved soccer. You might love soccer, but right now you're not into it, right? This could be music you're listening to. For me, I used to like a lot of like hardcore rock and roll music, like Alice in Chains, Guns N' Roses, sort of like more hardcore rock in a sense. And to me at that time, it felt too heavy. I just wanted to like Bob Marley and like spiritual, upbeat sort of, upbeat sort of music. There was a lot of TV shows I loved, like The Sopranos, a lot of really awesome HBO series like The Game of Thrones, that kind of stuff. That might not have been out at the time, but shows like that. And I found myself really not wanting to watch anything like that. And this is sort of perplexing because I was like, well, what do I like? I don't know what I like. All I like really is the spiritual stuff. But beyond that, I was sort of dumbfounded at how uninterested I was in so many things that once satisfied me. Even more so, kind of a different layer of this. You might feel like just the normal, ordinary human life with all its responsibility and obligation seems so mundane and so unessential, so pointless, so unfulfilling, and ultimately uninteresting. Like, why would I want to go out and cut my grass when there might be extraterrestrials spying on me right now? Why would I want to go to work when the whole planet is going through a massive shift in consciousness? Who wants to work? Number 5 is you have a strong, probably way stronger than ever before, desire to discover your life purpose, your mission, why you came. You might not be a fan of those words, but you know what I mean. You know there's something that you could be doing, something you want to be doing that will fulfill you and satisfy you probably 100 times more than your present career thing you've ever done. You know it's there. It's slowly emerging within you, but right now you have no idea what it is, and it's frustrating. It can cause a great deal of You might be aware of how little patience you have as you slowly await this onion of illusion as it peels away layer by layer, very slowly, like a Band-Aid being slowly ripped off. And you can sense you're getting somewhere, but not fast enough. You know there's more to that core of the onion. You're just dying to get a knife and slice it open, but you know intuitively it's a time to be patient. You know it doesn't work that way. You know you're already going very quickly into yourself, and then at the appropriate time your purpose will just be there, and it will be as grand and amazing as you anticipate. Number 6, I know how bad you want to talk about this. You really want to talk about this, but you can sense, for obvious reason, that no one's going to understand what the heck you're talking about. These experiences you're going through, these insights, these newfound realizations about life and the nature of reality and the eternal nature of the soul and what's happening on the planet. What could be more exciting and important to talk about? But everyone's going around business as usual. They're going to work, they're talking about they're watching the sports on the TV, and it's like, oh my God, I just want to talk about this. Or maybe if you're like me, spill the beans a bit, I've talked about this. And now the people you've told think you're nuts. They say, what are you talking about? And maybe it didn't go over as you had hoped. You thought you'd come in and enlighten them and explain to them all these exciting things, and they'd be on the same path as you, and then you could connect. And they're like, what? I told my mom one time, I used to be a personal trainer, And one time, my mom would always come with her friend, and that day her friend didn't come. So I saw it as a golden opportunity to tell my mom all about the stuff I've been into. So I went on to explain to her that the government, of course, is being heavily influenced by negative, other dimensional extraterrestrials, and that we're living on kind of a prison planet. We're highly oppressed. The mainstream media is out to get us, and all this stuff. I wanted to tell her that that's okay though, because things are changing. The energies are shifting. The vibration of the planet and ourselves are ascending. We're moving into a new dimension. Once we get there, we're gonna be floating around the cosmos as beings of light. Don't worry, Ma, it's cool. So, okay. You just spot me for this bench press, honey? No. The look on her face said it all. And I don't know why I didn't shut the hell up once I saw it, because she was like, oh my goodness, is my son insane? Should I be worried? Hopefully you didn't do that. Hopefully you learned. Hopefully you listened to your own common sense and said, you know what, maybe this is not a good idea. Just keep it to yourself. I know you want to talk about it, but they're not ready to hear it. And you know that. And you're just going to freak them out. When you attract people into your life that you can talk to this stuff about. For now, the YouTube videos will have to do. Number 7, you sense so strongly deep within your bones and inner spirit that something massive awaits us. Not just you, but the planet. You already can see your own process playing out there in the collective, and you have this just knowing that we're building up for something phenomenal, something grand, and something that's never been seen or experienced before, perhaps even to your soul. Your eternal soul is like chomping at the bits, waiting for this thing that you can't put your finger on, you can't explain, you can't define, you don't even know what the heck it is, but it's there, and it's building, and it's coming, and it's just building up momentum, and you can just taste it. But that's what we're all here to experience. We've come to the party, but it hasn't quite yet started in the way we know it's going to, but it's coming, and you know this. So if you're still watching and going through this hermit phase, just know this. You're doing everything you need to be doing. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Don't just believe me. Believe yourself. You've been telling yourself this, have you not? I know you've been feeling guided to make unusual changes. I know other people probably think what you're doing is odd, to say the least. I know you might think what you're doing is odd. I know you might think what you're reading and learning about and feeling could borderline be a little nutty. But there's a deeper part of you that knows that's not the case. There's a deep part of you that knows that you're exactly where you need to be in this exact moment. You also know that you're always where you need to be. You know that you'll always have what you need to have. You'll always know what you need to know, when you need to know it, and all you gotta do is sort of sit back and go with the flow as you've already been doing. Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Victor, and welcome to my YouTube page, which is all about helping people navigate their awakening process. And today's video is going to talk about seeing your friends and your family, and just people who have perhaps been in your circle, in a very different light. As you awaken, your consciousness expands. You see more of the moment, more deeply into the true nature of people that are in your life. And simultaneously, you start to prioritize your own happiness, your own growth, your own path, at a much higher order. You don't put that on the back burner so much anymore. At least you're getting urged to not do that. And as a result, you start to see people, again, in a different way, and you're starting to perhaps sum up, how are these people affecting me, my path, my growth, and my happiness? And it's not uncommon to conclude that a lot of the people who have been in your life for a long time are not really reciprocating the amount of love and just the way you're treating them. And consequently are, in a sense, weighing you down, stifling your forward progress into stepping into your own power, into your own truth, being your true self. And this is tough on a lot of different levels. It's sad. It's a sad thing because oftentimes we have memories of these people, like nostalgia of who we used to think they were. And even though we kind of know who they are now, we still have I have dreams a lot of me being with like my old friends and whatnot, and I wake up very sad and missing them. But I'm not really missing them. I'm missing my distorted memory of them. So there's this sadness, there's this realization that it's just not how it used to be. Then, of course, there's the challenge of, what do? It's kind of sometimes tough to take that jump and start acting differently because you know these people who are in your life are going to react to it. They say, whoa, what's your problem, buddy? Huh? You're not being who you used to be. They'll sense the change. And many times they'll try to bring you back down because you're going to make them feel uncomfortable. And they might even take it personally. But this reminds me of a great story that a wise man once told me. He didn't tell me personally. It's something he tells a lot of people. But I happened to listen to his YouTube video that talked about it. And it's a story of a crab fisherman. This man was walking down the beach one day while visiting Hawaii. And there was this dude. He was fetching crabs. He had this big net. He'd throw it into the water. And he would take all these crabs and pluck them off the net. And he'd put them in the bucket. And this one guy is talking to the fisherman. And he's noticing that all these crabs in a bucket, there's one of them in particular that's trying to get out. He's trying to climb its way out. He's kind of climbing on the other crabs. And he's about to jump out of the bucket. And so this guy says, hey man, your crab's about to escape and get back into the water, man. And the fisherman kind of laughs and kind of shrugs it off and says, no, you just watch. Sure enough, the guy watches and notices, says, watch. His little crab buddies are going to pull him back down. No crab ever escapes the bucket because all the other crabs pull him back down whenever they sense they're about to break out. And that is how a lot of people are in your life. They are crabs. They don't want to see you succeed, change, grow, expand, become more confident, become better versions of yourself because it's going to just reveal, to whatever degree you're improving, it's going to reveal that amount of their own shortcomings. And they're not going to want to deal with that, and they're going to associate that feeling of becoming more aware of their shortcomings with you. and they're going to try to pull your ass back down because that's easier than actually changing. And you're going to be aware of all of this. And then you have a choice. Do you fight your way out of this kind of like a lopsided relationship and stifling situation, which can be messy, or you just keep playing along to avoid the confrontation, maybe stunt your growth a little bit? They're both valid choices. But here's one thing I want you to consider. A lot of people keep themselves dumbed down thinking that they're helping this other person. Well, they need me in their life. I'm a good influence on them. And I feel bad. I love them, which is true. So I don't want to break away knowing that they might respond in a weird way, thinking I just don't like them. They might not understand fully. I can't explain to them why I'm breaking away. It's just going to create this like really uncomfortable situation, and I feel bad for them. Here's something I want you to understand. You're not really doing them any favors by not being yourself, ever, in any situation. Because if people are exhibiting behaviors that make people like you want to break away because you feel them as kind of a negative influence on your life, and you don't break away, they'll never know. If not you, then who else is going to teach them that valuable and essential human fundamental lesson? But perhaps by you breaking away and getting out of their life because of what they're doing, they might question themselves at one point. Maybe at a later date, yes. But that is a very powerful experience you can give them. Lastly, this begs the question, well, it's very sad knowing where they might be going. But they're not kind of coming with me on my vibrational ascent, and that might imply that they're not going to make the shift, they're not going to choose to raise their frequency, and they're going to allow themselves to experience the repercussions of ignoring the ascension energies present. And we all know what that means. So you just really want to save them and help them and lift them up. But loving someone truly is letting them be who they choose to be. You can't take away their free will choice. It is their choice to live their life the way they choose, just as it is yours. It's unloving to try to manipulate that. You feel they need to do this. Well, that's their choice, not yours. Regardless of how you feel. They feel you need to stay down there with them. And yet that doesn't make you very happy. These themes might be coming up now, guys, because they're all changing very rapidly. These summer energies of 2016 are no joke. They are going to catalyze change within you in a very big and obvious way, internally and externally. Relationships is going to come up at some point. The situation is going to come up for you at some point. It probably already has, but it might be kind of resurfacing. No, there's no wrong answer. There's no right thing to do. You just have to be who you know yourself to be in every given moment that you can, that you're aware of the choice, and everything else will always work out.
We all carry around ingrained beliefs and patterns that can distance us from the ones that we love. And as these these distortions temporarily amplify, it can cause like a tension in any kind of relationship. It can seem like they're going south sometimes, but oftentimes what that is, it's a surfacing of these misaligned beliefs and patterns that no longer resonate with your current vibration coming out to be seen and then consequently let go of, allowing you to settle back in to a degree of harmony and connection and just like heart-to-heart synergy, we'll say, that is, it's a new level and a new depth of relationships.
Your intuition is through the freaking roof. Tell me it's not. Your intuition is blowing your own mind now. You're able to see someone turn the corner a quarter mile away and you know them. You know where they're standing in their life. You know if they're a good person. You know how they're feeling. You know if there's someone you want to engage with. You can just vibe it out naturally, intuitively, effortlessly. You also just have these knowings now. Knowings like, okay, I know I should make this big move. I know it doesn't make sense. I know my mind has its objections. I know what people are going to think, but I have this knowing, this intuition that it should be done. It would benefit me. In fact, hold on right here. I'm going to go do that thing because I feel it so strongly. Where? Why? Where's that coming from? The veil is thinning between the conscious mind, the personality, the person you thought you were, and who you actually are as an eternal soul.
A lot of people reach out to me and say, hey Vic, I'm following the spiritual path and I believe I'm going through a spiritual awakening. So why is it that my life is worse off now than ever before? I feel more emotional than ever before. My life seems more chaotic than ever before, and I am just all over the place on all levels. So why does my life fall apart after awakening? And I'll tell you why. Because it's not the best you can do. Those emotions coming up, you're lugging them around. You can do better. Wouldn't you rather feel love and compassion and peace and confidence? Your career that's sort of crumbling, you can do better. Some of your relationships, some of the aspects of your life that are just crumbling before your eyes, it's because you can do better in truth. And the inner being within you that is the one awakening is letting you know that.
Put a big question mark, say, okay, am I ready just to hear someone complaining? Because you've been doing it for a long time. You see, this is where it really comes to self-love, which is going to the place where we find our greatest power. Most people, we're like, hey, I don't want to be a bad person. If I leave them, I'm a bad person. No, you're not a bad person. Sometimes it's all about respecting your energetic boundaries, because you can still love them, but from a distance. You stay when, even though they're complaining, you know you can help them, and you can help them till a certain point when now they can actually help themselves, okay? But if they're always complaining and they've been doing this for years upon years and you're still around, it's no longer their fault. It's now your responsibility to say, actually, what am I doing here? Okay? Many times, and this has happened to me along my journey, we're around people and sometimes we're like teacher, right? We're like the principal. We're like schooling them. We feel we have to preach to them, okay? And this is when I know it's time to let go. I don't want to have to convert anybody into anything. You see, the truth can't be told. It has to be realized. Slow motion this side. Do you feel you always have to preach to someone? 7-day vegan challenge. Are you always trying to convert people to go vegan and they're like not having it? Well, you don't have to force people to be anything they don't want to be. You see, you know when it's time to let go. If you feel you always have to preach to this person, convert this person, and there's a lot of resistance, a lot of struggle, it's not a natural interaction. I let that go. Like, I only surround myself with people where there is a huge amount of reciprocity, where I don't feel I have to preach to this person. I don't feel I have to preach to this person. Like, we vibe, okay? And your vibe will naturally attract your tribe, okay? And that's why we also have to look at our own unresolved issues, okay? If we feel we always need to preach to someone, maybe it's because we still are around this person because we still want to be validated. Some people really serve me and some people don't. Some people stay and some people I gotta let go. You gotta go. In your life, instead of seeking outside, start seeking inside. Get to know the real you. Have a conversation with yourself and say, actually, maybe, just maybe, it's time to love myself a little bit more. Because nobody is going to give you the love and attention you need besides yourself. Only you can do that. Right? Growing up, I used to play by myself. My mom was like, gosh, you're so happy and content. I'm a full cup. And that's why when you become whole, you will now start to see your reflection. And then you dance off into the sunset. So the moment you realize wanting nothing of someone else will actually attract them to you. When you learn how to cultivate internal happiness, joy, and serenity, another person will come along and amplify it. Many times we haven't worked on ourselves. For a long time, deep divers, I didn't work on myself. I was lazy. And I'm like, I just expect to meet someone that's going to sweep me off my feet. It wasn't going to happen like that. Why? Because I wasn't working on myself. You see, fellas are attracted to women who are working on themselves. Same thing. Okay, women, you love guys who are working on themselves. In other words, cultivating inner peace and balance. Because if someone is not working on themselves, mastering their emotions, it means that they won't be able to take care of us. Right? So, become better to attract better. Slow motion this side. Say it again, Ralph. Become better to attract better, okay? When I was just so desperately seeking, desiring someone special, it wasn't happening because I wasn't working on who I am. Right now, because I'm in alignment, helping millions of people, it just arrives at my doorstep. Oh, thanks. Because I worked on myself, now I'm helping other people work on themselves. So forget about trying to meet someone right now. My message to you is to go on a retreat. Go on a retreat. Spend time alone. You see, many people who are single need to be alone because you need to know thyself before you can be with someone else. That's why there's so many relationship problems all around the world. I get thousands of messages every single day. Ralph, tell me, my relationship is terrible because this person is never there. Because they don't know themselves. If they knew themselves, they would have known what they were signing up for. So that's why, to become better, you have to work on yourself every single day. Become better to attract better, okay? Timing is everything. Many times, it's not our time yet. You see, just because it's not happening for you right now, it doesn't mean you're not going to find someone special. You got to start realizing it could happen for you in 3 years, in 4 years, okay? Go and talk to your aunties and uncles. Say, oh, when did you meet your partner? They'll tell you, oh, when I was like 37. Huh? So what happened before that point? Well, that's another story, right? So you got to be patient. You have to be patient. Even if you are lonely and single and desiring someone to give you a hug at night, be patient. People who are lonely are not desirable to themselves. Law of attraction states we never attract what we want, we always attract what we are. So it happened to me along my journey. I became a vegan, I attracted a vegan. Okay? But also because I'm desirable to myself. When was the last time you practiced self-care? If you are practicing self-care, your loneliness disappears because now you actually have a good relationship with yourself. And then, if someone comes, that's great. If they don't come, no problem. Because you love yourself, that's all that matters. Right? So, be desirable to yourself. Ladies say, oh, I'm so fine. Fellas say the same thing. Be desirable to yourself. And you can only do that through authenticity. Nothing is sexier than authenticity. We're not available to really love someone. We're caught up. We are preoccupied, working every single day and no time to cultivate the love energy. That's why I'm my own boss, because I've made time for love. That's why I'm never lonely. I'm my own CEO. I'm my own boss, right? So you have to realize that maybe you got to start putting your priorities right. What is most important? Is it just slaving away at work, or is it actually investing? Because love is also a great investment. Investing in loving someone else and sharing your life with them. Be willing to give. Be willing to appreciate. Be willing to be thankful. Many times, a lot of people who are alone, they take people for granted. I always see that people, especially even deep divers, a lot of them are, you beautiful deep divers are very grateful. But some people aren't grateful. And I always say that will reflect into your relationship. When you are showing when you are showing a lack of gratitude, that person will walk away eventually. If they know their true worth. That's why you got to be grateful for people who you are connecting with. You have to be grateful for people you are connecting with every single day. Don't take people for granted. Otherwise, you will end up alone, lonely and single. Show people appreciation and start to give freely. Love can become a gamble. And if you don't give freely, if you don't really open up yourself to someone else and be vulnerable, even though you are feeling lonely, you'll never really meet your true reflection. You will never really meet your true reflection because you got to open up 100%. Say, actually, I just love you. Like, tell that person. Don't try and play games. A lot of people who are lonely are playing games, too many games. I'm not going to text because I don't do that. Then you're not really ready to meet someone special. You got to be able to become vulnerable and express your true feelings and emotions to that person. Deep divers. When we talk of waking up every single day, what is the first thing that comes into your mind? Are you waiting for someone to love you? Or are you about being purposeful? Because when you are purposeful, you will have more love to give. And that's how to deal with loneliness when you are desiring to be with someone. I'm asking you today, deep divers, to be purposeful. And the more purposeful you become, you will meet someone special, a soulmate, even your twin flame, because they have seen you in your true authenticity. Slow motion this side. It happened to me along my journey. I've been making videos a long time. Can you imagine how many amazing people I've met? Can you imagine how many amazing people I've met? Exactly. So, if you aren't in your purpose, if you're feeling sorry for yourself, how can people really see you in your highest nature? People have to love your flaws, but also they've got to love your light and your shine, as well as your darkness. They've got to love all of it. And that can only happen when you are really in the process of becoming your greatest version. So get up today, start living your dream, start really realizing that when you are in alignment, you will meet someone special who's also doing a similar thing to you. They share the same values as you, okay? Learn this, deep divers. Prepare yourself. Every single day, prepare yourself for that person. If they're not here yet, that's good. It means there's even more time for you to work on yourself, so you have so much more to give them. What? Slow motion this side, baby. Okay. You find the one you love, doing what you love. Every single day I'm sharing. And in return, I attract someone special. It also comes from allowing yourself to be seen. Men, stop being macho men. Ladies, also learn to surrender. Everyone's got to surrender. I've got to even learn how to surrender more and more, because only through true surrender can love manifest. Let me repeat that. Only through true surrender can love manifest. So surrender today. Open yourself to other people. Be available. Love yourself. And be patient. The love you want will find you when you find yourself. The first rule I learned is that being alone is your chance and opportunity to embrace me time. Woo! Yes, because for so long you've been helping other people, expending your energy outside. Being alone and actually being happy comes when you're like, oh my gosh, that means I've got more me time. That's right. I can go for that massage. That's right. I can take that beautiful walk into the forest. That's right. I can sunbathe. Like, I really need a tan right now. Okay? So I've realized that the reason why a lot of people are running away from being alone and then still miserable is because they're in resistance. You're in resistance to surrendering, because we were born alone for a reason. Slow motion this side. Like, you didn't come out with a cat down the road, did you? Oh, you did? That's another story. So I've realized that whenever I'm alone, I can become happier. I can be happy when I know this is a perfect time for me time to recharge and reboot and replenish and have a better connection to myself, to reconnect to myself, okay? Being alone and happy about it. What I've learned along my journey is this, that you are infinite worth, okay? That's how to be alone and happy about it. Actually, a friend sent me that today. You are infinite worth. And I'm like, I'm going to take that and use it for a video. So thank you. You know who you are. Karen. Thank you. You are infinite worth. Okay, that's how to be alone and be happy about it. Many times we only feel validated, and we only feel validated when we get the approval from other people, when we get the go-ahead from other people. I've realized to be alone and be happy about it, it's time to start validating your own existence, okay? And that's what I started to do. Like, I love being alone because I'm like, I'm good enough. I don't need you. I don't need you and you and you to tell me I'm good enough. Being alone, because once again, you are now reconnecting to the truth of who you are, you start to realize that actually, I am good enough. Ever been in a crowd full of people and still not feel good enough because you're trying too hard, trying to impress people, and you're still miserable? So, the second rule for being alone and happy about it is to realize you are infinite worth. The third rule for being alone and happy about it. Now, what helped me along my journey was to realize this. Value how you see yourself more than how others see you. What? Slow motion this side. Tell him again, Ralph. Value how you see yourself more than how other people see you. So once again, I often find that the most confident people are the ones who spend a lot of time alone. Because now you are boosting your own self-esteem because you love yourself. You got to love yourself to be alone. If you don't love yourself, sometimes you will run away from yourself, okay? So I've learned that it's all about how I see myself. Do I see myself with unconditional positive self-acceptance? When I'm with other people, sometimes I don't, because I'm always in competition with them. When I'm alone, absolutely, because I'm learning to accept myself. This is how I am. Like, this is how the universe made me. I can't get a refund. Look. Okay, that's how to be alone. Fun. And being happy about it. Mindful. You can actually become mindful. This is the perfect time to become more intuitive. You can actually now become a psychic mind reader, because when you are alone, you are becoming more sensitive. It's a perfect time to find the beauty in the silence, okay? What am I listening to? Whenever I'm alone, I'm like, great, that means I can meditate in peace, right? So it's a perfect time to really become more observant, tune your senses, because once again, the human body is just like a musical instrument. And when you are alone, you can actually tune your senses to have a heightened state of awareness, so you can become more intuitive. It's like a superpower. That's the beauty of being alone, and now you can become happier about that. Reaping the benefits from my creativity. Whenever I'm around a lot of people, sometimes it can be a distraction. I lose the focus to create. So if you're unhappy about being alone, realize this is the perfect time to actually explore your creativity and your infinite potential. What's the ninth? The ninth rule for being alone and happy about it. You can actually now start dreaming. You can actually now start dreaming up what you truly want to do in life, where you truly want to be in life, and actually start pursuing it. Actually start stepping into radical action. Actually start getting it done. You see, nothing gets done without effort. Slow motion this side. So I've realized when I'm alone, I can actually start working on my dreams and actually start pursuing my dreams to make it happen. Okay? Make it happen. When you're alone, you can make it happen. Okay? So you can be happy about that, because sometimes it's going to require total concentration for you to really manifest thoughts into tangible realities. Thoughts you can now cherish. Oh yes, hold it dear to your heart. Cherish every single interaction you've ever had. When you're alone, you can now appreciate other people's absence. Sometimes if you're just around someone, you start taking people for granted. So that's why it's so beautiful to be alone, because now you actually appreciate the importance of other people, and you can now be happy about that. Worry about it. But if you don't know yourself, you are going to be turned into something you may not like. You're going to end up living someone else's life. You're going to be stuck in a really crappy situation, a job you hate, because you haven't taken time, the alone time, to get to know yourself, to see what it is you want in life. Like any YouTuber starting YouTube had to start alone. They had to buy a camera. They had to figure out what they want to say, right? You got to be alone to be creative in the first place. If you're just so concerned with being like everyone else, you're going to get the same as everyone else. What? Let me say that again. If you are so concerned, with being like everyone else, you are going to get the same as everyone else. You're going to be living a very mediocre life. If you really want to live a life that's different, you got to be able to be alone without getting lonely. You see, and that happens when you realize this is an opportunity to really know thyself, know your purpose, right? And that can only happen when you go into the wilderness. Look, everybody is going to be alone. You were born alone. I got news for you. You were born alone, and you're probably going to die alone with a bunch of grapes in your mouth. Look, I've realized this, that being alone without getting lonely, to do it, you have to realize this is an opportunity to embrace your uniqueness. Don't be another brick in the wall. Don't be like the rest of them, because you're going to attract the same conditions as the rest of them. Like, I always look at people like YouTubers who really get a big following, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. It's because they are so different. When everyone's doing this, they're doing like this, okay? Your difference will make a difference. To be alone, you have to start embracing your uniqueness. You weren't made like anybody else in the universe. Not even a cat down the road. No, you are totally different, okay? So that's how to be alone without getting lonely. Look, many times we don't realize that if you really want to be a pioneer, you got to be alone, okay? You got to put on your thinking cap, come up with the great ideas. You got to be alone for that, because so long as you are in a crowd of people, okay, you're with a crowd of people, you lose your originality, okay? To be alone without getting lonely, you got to cherish this alone time that at least, like, being alone helped me say, can I get a hello there? Do you think if I was just in large crowds of people all the time, I would have the confidence to say that? So to be alone without getting lonely, you got to start changing your perspective of how you see being alone. Nobody is ever alone, because the truth is everything is connected. That's basic quantum physics, right? Everything is connected, just universal oneness. Okay, look, new frontiers. You go to new frontiers when you are alone. Okay, that's how to be alone without getting lonely. New frontiers. You are going where no person has gone before. But that feels really lonely, Ralph. But they're going to join you. Oh, they're going to join you. Okay, it's like Steve Jobs created the iPhone, and then everyone bought an iPhone. They joined him. His marvelous creation. Okay, so you got to realize that if you are alone, you are ahead of the game. You are ahead of your time. You are going to go to places nobody else has gone before. You have to own it. You have to own it. You have to be like, yes, I'm alone. I'm all by myself, but I'm happy. You see, from childhood, from when you were really small, you know what it was like in school. Oh, that's the loner. Okay? So a lot of people will be around other people even if they don't like them to avoid being alone. You see, if you really want to be alone without feeling lonely, stop being in resistance to being alone. Like, I love being alone. It helps me clear my mind. It helps me trust myself. I feel healthier. Because some days it's like there's so many people and different energies. You're just like, I just want to disappear right now. Okay, I'm back. Look, I've realized this, that being alone can help you trust yourself. Being alone is like going into a wilderness, right? But when I was alone for a long time, when I was even first starting Infinite Waters, I actually found myself. You see, sometimes, just sometimes, you need to lose yourself to find yourself. Slow motion this side. You see, if you are always just around people, you start absorbing their ideas, their mannerisms, right? You don't really think for yourself. So I've learned this. To be alone, without getting lonely, own it. Say, hey, I'm sitting in the park all by myself, and it feels so good to be alive, baby. Okay, yeah. You have to convert your loneliness into actually liking being alone, okay? And how you do it is to realize this. All of us will be lonely when we aren't really happy with ourselves, when we don't really love ourselves, when we don't really accept ourselves. The irony of it is that the more you try to fit in into a crowd not meant for you, you will feel lonely. I know a lot of people who have a lot of people around them all the time, and they're so lonely. Lonely? Yeah, they're so lonely. Sometimes I'm just in the park by myself, alone, and I'm so at peace. I'm like, thank goodness I've gotten away from those humans, because I'm an alien, right? I love being alone. I can meditate, okay? So realize if you go throughout history and you look at all the spiritual masters, they're always alone, but they're never lonely, because they have mastered themselves. So what really freed me along my journey to get over loneliness was to really come into my own uniqueness. Like, I had to learn how to be alone, and I'm so happy being alone. Your loneliness emanates from the fear of being alone. That's why a lot of people turn to drugs, alcohol, because they can't stand themselves. In other words, the human being is on the run from itself. I'm asking you today to really learn how to sit with these emotions, because your loneliness is part of a process which leads to you being alone. So you have to go through the loneliness to learn how to be alone, to really free yourself. I'm a pioneer. I create trends, right? And that's only because there was a time in my life when I was really alone. No one was around me. I couldn't relate to anyone. Then I realized, okay, I've got to learn how to sit with these emotions. It's not a bad thing that you feel lonely. You just have to learn how to sit with it, embrace your flaws, all of those aspects of yourself you don't like, learn how to love them, and then you'll feel alone. You're going to feel alone, and then you have to love that feeling of being alone. And that's how you get over your loneliness, okay? Learn how to use this as time to know thyself. You see, a lot of us, as soon as we wake up, we're on the phone. We're checking our emails. Oh, this person, that person. No, that's a distraction. You see, what's freed me along my journey is to realize that we have everything we need inside of ourselves. Slow motion this side. I know a lot of people who are always on their phones, but they are more lonely than ever. So learn how to go into the wilderness. That's what I had to do to start Infinite Waters. You see, you can't really get creative until you leave the crowd. You can't really become your greatest version until you go into the wilderness alone. Now you really start to know thyself. Deep divers, I've also realized this, that we are never alone. The universe always sends someone. You see, that's why people who are alone and happy, they realize they're never, ever alone. You can never be alone in the universe because everything is interconnected. So people, when you see them alone, they're actually smiling because they've got like trillions of cells inside of their body working hard and diligently to keep them alive. So they're like, thank you, ladies, and thank you, ladies and guys, right? Everything in nature works in a symbiotic relationship with everything else. Loneliness is an illusion created from your ego because the ego loves separation. What? Slow motion this side. Say it again, Ralph. Loneliness is an illusion born out of the ego, and the ego loves separation. So learn how to lose your ego. The I, that's what makes you lonely. Start to embrace the collective. I know I'm never alone. I know that the universe is always sending amazing people into my life every single day because I connect with beautiful people every single day. But I had to come into who I was for that to happen. And now you become a pioneer. You see, the more time you spend alone and you embrace it, whether it's meditating, whether Deep Divers is going for a walk along the beach, whether it's skating, exercising, going to the gym, alone, working out, you were born alone and you are going to leave this dimension alone. However, we were created from two people making love, watching my videos. We are not separate from the whole. Everything is interconnected. But when you do find yourself in a lonely situation, no one's around you, and you're like, friends, where did you go? And it's very uncomfortable, isn't it? Realize that this is a great opportunity for you to hear that small, still voice saying, I'm your friend. I'm your friend, right? That's a chance for you to hear that small, still voice and really have the courage to leave the crowd so you can actually hear yourself, know what you want. You see, for me, there are so many benefits in being alone because once again, we are never alone anyway. Okay. But when you are by yourself, it's time when you can work on yourself. The best work is self-work. And you can't work on yourself if you are constantly in a crowd of people. If you are constantly being distracted from your true purpose. The reason why I'm inspiring millions of people and Infinite Waters is so huge was because I was alone a lot. I was lonely first and realized it was because I was afraid of being alone. Then I became alone. I loved it. Then I had all of these great ideas. And one of them was just to say, feels so good to be alive. You get in touch with the real you. You get in touch with the real you for once, right? You get in touch with everything you are feeling. A lot of us, we become disconnected, desensitized, and that's why we are afraid to be ourselves. That is what is keeping you away from really growing and manifesting. Because once again, you're not in touch with your emotions. Your emotions they reveal to you your deepest desires and wishes. That is why people who are really emotional say, oh, she's so emotional, he's so emotional. That's a good thing because it means they know what they want, they're going to get it. And they are having that energy in motion. They are feeling alive. Number 8. Are you afraid of the dark? Being alone shows you that light and dark are two sides of the same coin. No darkness without light. No light without darkness. It's a unification of the poles. Number 8. Are you afraid of the dark? Being alone shows you that light and dark are two sides of the same coin. No darkness without light. No light without darkness. It's a unification of the poles. We live in a mirage of separation. Ever notice why a lot of dark things are really negative and a lot of light things are really positive? It's all by design. But in actuality, they're both the same. It's just a perception of the mind. As a psychologist, you begin to discover that a lot of people have suppressed emotions. I talk to people every day. Been doing this for years. Been analyzing myself for years. Knowing myself. Been on this journey for a long time. Human beings are in a huge predicament on the planet if they don't take a look at their shadow self, which is all the suppressed, buried emotions. A lot of people, you ask them, how are you? They say, I'm fine. Fearful, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. You've never been fine in your life. Take that grin off your face. Okay, I'm going through a lot. That's better. That's what I always say to people. That's better. Let's talk real. My life isn't perfect. I'm no saint. This ain't the Brady Bunch. I'm a human being. I'm a multi-dimensional being. I'm everything in the cosmos. That means I will experience everything. When you can allow yourself to be crazy and realize you aren't crazy, you're just expressing all the different sides of yourself. You now become your greatest version. You can only do that when you are alone. A lot of us, we want to follow trends. We don't follow trends. We create them. No slow motion for that. Being alone allows you to look at your unresolved issues. When I was in nature, I was like, I'm really scared right now, feeling really anxious right now, don't know what to do right now, because I realized I had a whole lot of work to do. When you're with people, it takes your mind off all of that stuff, so you don't have time to really look at what is really inside of you. That's why in ancient times, people, the sages, you always see them alone, because they were once again creating infinite balance within themselves. So being alone is not negative. In fact, it is one of the greatest ways to heal yourself.
It feels like a low level of despair you live in, where you're not getting any answers, but you're living okay. And you can smile at the office, you know, but it's a low level of despair.
And you don't take any of them, you don't take anything now?
Nothing. I don't take anything. I rarely drink coffee. I'm very serious about no alcohol, no drugs. Life is too beautiful.
It's what's happening right now inside everybody is they're going, who am I? And they're depressed. You know, a lot of people, because they're trying to hold up an image in the world. And that's what depression is. You know, people go like, oh, Jim's been depressed and stuff. Well, yeah, I was depressed when I was trying to be the Wizard of Oz instead of the sweaty guy behind the curtain. But now I know that Oz is a character, you know, and you know, I think everybody deals with that. Everybody walks around and they go like, why am I depressed? Well, it's because you're trying to be something for the world, you know, and as soon as you let that go, better things happen because they're just happening, but it's not, you know, now it's just sadness. You know, sadness comes, happiness comes, it's the weather that flies by in the sky. It doesn't sit on you long enough to drown you, you know. That said that.
You know, you talk about like Jim Carrey the man, Jim Carrey the performer. Are you more comfortable as one or the other, or is that like, are they even mutually exclusive?
I don't exist. So they're all characters that I've played, including Jim Carrey, including Joel Barish, including any of those things. They're all characters. You know, Jim Carrey was a less intentional character, right? Because I thought I was just building something that people would like, but it was a character, you know, so it's, you know, I played the guy that was free from concern so that people who watched me would be free from concern, you know, and then at a certain point you go like, okay, well, that's great, but, you know, it's like the one thing, like people talk about depression all the time. The difference between depression and sadness is just, you know, from happenstance, whatever happened or didn't happen for you, or, you know, grief or whatever it is. And depression is your body saying, fuck you, I don't want to be this character anymore. I don't want to hold up this avatar that you've created in the world. It's too much for me, you know? And so a friend of mine who's a spiritual teacher has a really good take. His name is Jeff Foster, and his take on it is that they should change, you know, you should think of the word of depressed as deep rest. Deep rest. Your body needs to be depressed. It needs deep rest from the character that you've been trying to play. You know, the great and powerful Oz. I'm the great and powerful Oz. How dare you come near me? You know, kind of thing. And you're just the sweaty guy behind the curtain going, It's an amazing metaphor, you know, in that movie.
So overcoming depression is a great deal more complicated than simply deciding with your free will to stop resisting and accept that futility and do different things that are empowering instead. And it's a great, great deal more difficult than just jumping out of the hole that you got stuck in. If you want to do the best that you can do besides being totally present, then help somebody who's currently depressed to face that pain. Instead of trying to get them out of their mood by doing something that will shift their focus, really help them to consciously go into it.
In other words, instead of trying to get a depressed person out of their darkness, hold their hand and dive in.
What I'd like to offer are ideas that support people who recognize these bouts of depression in their lives and in others, that want a bit of perspective on it, and perhaps a solution or an idea that might support them in not only dealing with the depression while you're in it, knowing how to handle it, but also recognizing that it's probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to you. Depression is not only normal, it's essential, and be grateful for it because it allows you to reorder yourself at a higher level. Every time I experience a bout of depression, I come out on the other end a different person, doing different things. But it's because I'm aware of what's happening and I'm looking, I'm aware. I want to see the opportunities as they present themselves to me instead of falling into the depths of a spiral down depression because I'm personally identified with what is happening when I'm upset.
Excuse me. Hey, you. I need you to stop what you're doing right now and come live inside this box. Now, it's a little small, it's a little tight, but I'm pretty sure you can make it work because you've actually been making it work your whole life. You just haven't realized in it. But now I actually want you to realize that you're going to come live inside this box for the next 70 to 80 years of your life, maybe 100 if you're lucky. It's a nice box. It'll do. This box is a representation of that relationship that you're in right now that doesn't serve your heart's deepest desire. This box is a representation of that job that you continue to go to just for money. Although it doesn't serve your soul's calling, it doesn't serve your purpose. This box is a representation of all of your fears and limitations. This box is a representation of that question that keeps circling around your mind of, will I ever be accepted? You know what I say? Let's throw this box out because that box is not serving your highest good. Now, for the longest time, I lived inside the same box, and I can assure you this, it is not comfortable. And the reason why I lived inside that box for so long, because I was afraid of what other people thought of me. I was afraid of being rejected. And this comes from never being good enough for my father growing up. This comes from never getting his love and support. This comes from having teachers tell me I wasn't smart enough and being placed in all the assisted learning classes. This comes from being bullied for being fat when I was a little boy. This comes from my sister's heroin addiction and watching her struggle her entire life. But always, all along inside of me, I always had this thing that was so much greater than my fears of what people might think, my fear of rejection, my fear of not being good enough. And at some point in your life, you have to ask yourself, am I going to continue to live inside of this box because I'm afraid of what other people might think? Or am I going to start following my heart's bliss and living life on my terms and not someone else's?
Worth is determined by needs.
By needs? Okay, can you elaborate on that?
It's time of war. And let's say that in a time of war, somebody's got a bunch of books. They've got the most expensive library ever because they've got several books that are first editions. What value do those books hold in a time of war?
None.
How about an alcohol salesman?
In times of war? Oh yeah, he would have a lot.
Because the need adjusted itself. So worth is determined by needs. I'm giving you this explanation so I can reverse to childhood. You ready? A parent will value the child that meets their needs. That's why you got the message that you weren't of value. So a lot of overcoming the worthlessness is about really accepting that the reality is that you are a book in a time of war. Does that mean you're overall worthless? In fact, you may be the most expensive book in the universe. It's not going to matter in a time of war. And that's the pain of the incompatible family. In our families, the recognition of our innate excellence doesn't usually happen because our parents wanted something else than what we were naturally excellent at. This is why our sibling that could adapt to become whatever they wanted was the one who was loved the most. For example, a boy who is excellent at athletics in a home where parents want a child to be intellectually excellent will not be acknowledged or loved for that excellence. A child who's a natural problem solver will be shamed for their excellence in a home where the family agreement is validate one another. The child who is excellent for being smart enough to see reality in a family where the family has an overlay will be told he or she is too difficult and will be turned into the family scapegoat.
Everything works this way. We only recognize value if it's in alignment with our needs. We only recognize excellence if it's in alignment with what we desire. And I mean everything in life works this way, not just the recognition of excellence.
If your family doesn't understand you and the way your life is currently progressing and evolving, it's for one of two reasons. Either they don't want to understand, they don't want to put the effort in, or really open up to discovering what's going on in your life, or they simply don't have the means currently to understand it, or at least they don't perceive that they do. They might not think they have the capacity to know, or the time, or the wherewithal to stand strong and discover it with you. So that's okay. You shouldn't let the limitations of others define the path that you are on, which is unlimited. Your family might not understand, your friends might not understand, but you do, and you feel drawn towards the light. So continue seeking, continue growing, and continue evolving. And if those in your life truly care about you, they'll accept it. And if not, I'd like to remind you guys that the soul needs no validation. None whatsoever. And so when we begin seeking internal truth, achieving higher states of conscious awareness, you'll have to remember that anytime you notice yourself seeking validation from friends, from family, from a loved one, that's the ego mind. And it's a great way to remind ourselves to move beyond that line of thought. Only the ego wants people to understand us. Only the ego wants us to be accepted by others rather than focusing first on accepting ourselves. So if we live from a place of pure loving awareness, centered in our heart, and know that we're living as best we can, to provide as best we can, and to be the best we can, we are living from a soul space. And in that space, validation is no longer required. And the more you live there, the less you seek validation overall.
Good morning, everyone. I want you to ask yourself why you keep being around people who misinterpret you. So you try to show them and tell them who you are, and yet they don't want to hear you. They've already made up their mind about you. If you keep hanging around them, it means that there's still some codependency, some things that you don't think you're worthy of. My simple message for you today is think of how much energy you exert trying to get people to see you. It's like climbing over a mountain every time, and you never really make it to the other side, because people have their own filters and their preconceived ideas of who you are. So be around people who see you, and when you say something to them, they're actually hearing that as opposed to what they're projecting that you're saying.
It doesn't matter if you're a celebrity in life, if you have 1,000 yachts, or if you have 1,000 friends. The one thing you can always count on that will rear its ugly head is the frequency that you have yet to deal with, the frequency you have yet to resolve, which is why it keeps popping up in your hologram. So an example of this would be, if you are seeking approval from someone who isn't seeing you, by obsessing over it, you are energizing the narrative that you are unworthy of their attention. And that's going to keep you in a loop cycle. Another example is if someone writes a negative comment on your social media and you have that knee-jerk reaction, and then you get on live and you tell all your followers what happened. You're still serving them because they love you and you are love, and you being here is a service to humanity. But ask yourself, is this responsible on my part? Is this up-leveling me? I came into this world alone and I'm leaving alone. So how can I make sure that I reach graduation from within? There are many levels of consciousness, you guys. And as long as you feed that wound rather than feel that wound and not act on it, because when you act on it, you're actually energizing that storyline. If you feel that wound, then you're going to have more insights and new insights to share with people. All right. And sometimes it's not so much that you're feeding the wound. It's just that you're still believing a lie. Someone says something to you and it's not true and you're still feeding into it. Ask yourself, is that responsible? Am I upgrading my system? Think of it as a train. There are two trains, right? And every time you get triggered, you can either get on train A and reenact the same old thing, or you can get on train B, take a nice deep breath, pause, and choose that instead and be led to a new destination. That's a metaphor, but it's kind of how it works. So the guys are encouraging everyone right now to look at their stuff, examine your stuff, and feel it rather than to feed it.
When you awaken and you get busy loving yourself, nurturing your soul, doing all the things you've ever wanted to do but couldn't do because you were making sure that everyone around you was taken care of, you threw all your desires on the back burner, you're going to become exceptionally selective about who it is that you spend your time with. So what they bring to you, the offers, the invitation, is going to have to be as valuable or more valuable than your amazing quiet time, the time that you're taking to reconnect to yourself, to rediscover yourself. So you're going to become a no person to a lot of people. So get comfortable with declining invitations, but you're going to become a yes man or a yes woman towards yourself. All right? You're going to regenerate. Please never guilt yourself. Never blame yourself for saying no to others. This is part of your transformation. This is part of getting acquainted with yourself again. Okay? You are laying the groundwork for all the amazing manifestations that are going to arrive in your reality. When we first awaken and we find that infinite well of photonic light, of source energy, creator energy, well, that becomes our vitamin. And it's not just a vitamin C, it's a multivitamin, and by multi, I mean multidimensional. So it supplements our soul. It's food for the soul. We don't require much. We don't need to have 1,000 friends, because we now have invisible friends we call our spirit guides, and you become your own best friend. So there are too many people in the world who are yes men. They say yes out of obligation. They say yes because they're afraid of the person's response, and then they go home and build resentment. That's because they're infecting themselves. We need to be no people for a while. You need to put yourself first. And if someone asks you to do something, intuitively tune into the energy of what that's going to look like or feel like. And if it doesn't boost you like a vitamin would, just don't do it. It's not that complicated. All right? We have to say no to the old systems of obligation, of fear, of what that person's going to think of you. This is about stepping to the forefront of our reality and creating a whole new one. If you were at the Ascended Masters Club right now and you said that you have all these goals, they would look at you and say, what the hell is that? You know, I always tell people that I don't have a human drive, and that's the truth. Because this idea that the majority of humanity has subscribed to, that you need to have human goals, is a complete falsehood. It's still a third dimensional, fourth dimensional presentation of reality. It's being governed by time. It's thinking that you have to pack it all in before you die, and that if you don't achieve goals, then you're not divine. The Ascended Masters didn't ascend by having goals. They ascended by learning how to be again, by enjoying life, by enjoying their cup of coffee, by connecting to their breath, by working in concert with their higher self. And naturally, when you do this, there is an abundance of source energy that courses through your body, which naturally inspires you into action. And then you end up achieving more than what you would have if you had goals. So my advice to you is really kind of re-examine how you're approaching your life and think bigger.
People who really struggle with the fear of missing out, in fact, struggle with social anxiety. And the patterns that created this social anxiety later in life, as usual, can be found in childhood. Let me explain them to you now. This child is a child who was raised by caregivers who were not actually capable of loving and, let's call it, supporting the unique, authentic individual that this child was. Instead, they were born to parents who saw children more like a ball of clay, as something to shape into whatever they decided that they wanted. As a result, when this child went for what they really wanted, there was massive consequences for it, or massive perceived consequences. What they met with was disapproval, shaming, and withdrawal. Doing what they wanted led to conflict with people they couldn't afford to be in conflict with.
FOMO, fear of missing out. Don't you think that no one wants to go anywhere deep down? Like everyone's, before you're going, oh, have we got to go to this thing? Yeah, we've got to go. Then you go, oh, you're nervous, especially if you're like me and you don't drink and take drugs. That's it. You just arrive there feeling that feeling of, oh, God, look at all these people. So as for the fear of missing out, of like, oh, there's this thing going on, there isn't. There isn't anything going on. It's a way of structuring your feelings that you are not good enough. That's what it is. I should be somewhere else doing another thing. You shouldn't be somewhere else doing another thing. What is it? What do you want to be at? The World Cup? The Oscars? It's too busy. You wouldn't like it. If you have fear of missing out, you must think, what is it that I envisage my life being like? What is it that I want to achieve? These things, these events, parties, gatherings, it can feel sort of sad to not be included. The answer is to address the sadness. Fear of missing out is an illusory thing. It's a distraction from the truth of the disconnection within you.
When you wait at the elevator, if you use an elevator where you live or at work, for example, or when you're in the elevator, these are short moments. Why do you really need to look at your phone? No. Why not be aware of your breathing? If you cannot directly go into presence, the first entry point into presence is to notice that you're breathing. And to notice that you're breathing, I call that one conscious breath, is to have your attention sensing the air flowing in and out of your body. That's one conscious breath. And if you're sensing that, you might notice you're not thinking at the same time. You can't. You're either sensing your breathing or you're thinking. But
When we are uncomfortable or anything unpleasant happens, we look to take refuge in something. Usually we turn to food, alcohol, sex, drugs, money, power, or relationships. But none of these things gives us the lasting protection or satisfaction we're looking for. When you understand you can't find lasting happiness in samsara, then the desire to find true refuge becomes strong. Why should you think differently when it comes to your spiritual life? To find a way out of suffering, you must find a guide who has already found the way out and can show you how to do it yourself. To find a spiritual teacher is the most fundamental aspect.
So I was actually having this conversation like 5 days ago. Basically, when you have had trauma that has happened within the context of relationship, healing must take place within the construct of a relationship. Now, a lot of us in the spiritual field are massive avoidants. So we're going to sell you on the idea that you can do everything by yourself and should. Why? Because no one was there for us, so why would we be that powerless as to depend on that? But basically, we need people to rehabilitate people trauma. And you can trust that the universe is essentially going to put you in front of the people who can do that with you and for you. So I think you are at a point in your healing where you are ready to involve people in your healing process, who can be there for you so you don't have to keep doing it alone, and who can witness your pain and your joy. In the spiritual field, you have a whole demographic of people that are intensely empowered in their independence, but whom have incredibly distant and crappy relationships. I'm going to make the concept of trust incredibly simple for you. Simply put, trust is, I can rely on you to capitalize on my best interests. I want you to sit with that definition for a minute. Just let it sink in. This is about as scientific as we can get with the concept of what trust actually is. Notice I didn't say I can rely on you to capitalize my best interests above your own, nor did I say you're completely responsible for my happiness. Trust is quite simply, I can rely on you to capitalize on my best interests. And this is what makes a relationship worth being.
You can look at everything joyfully, or you can look at everything with great sense of misery. Your joy and misery comes from within you. Gu means darkness, Ru means dispeller. One who dispels your darkness is a guru. You seek a guru because you want your seeking to be more effective, not because you're seeking an answer. Stress, tension, anxiety, depression, madness, all kinds of things. What it means is, your intelligence has turned against you, that's all. Why your intelligence has turned against you? There's no stable enough base. So the entire yogic system is about this, that you create a stable base so that your intelligence works for you.
The question is, do you want to allow yourself to be fully shattered? That's a question. And many things that don't work out in your early life, you will see later on, it is a great blessing. So whenever something hurts you, there are two options. You can either become wounded or you can become wise. This is the choice. The more things hurt you early on in your life, the wiser you should have become, isn't it? But unfortunately, most people become wounded. This is simply because they just need an excuse to turn their own intelligence against themselves, that's all. Especially if the world around you turns against you, is it not very, very important that your intelligence stands up for you? Right now, let's say you're really blissed out like me. Do you care who is around, who is not around? If they're around, it's fantastic. They're gone, fantastic. Because your experience of life is no more determined by what you have and what you don't have, whether it's people or things or food or this or that. It is not determined by that. Once your way of being is not determined by anything outside of you, then there is no such thing as loneliness. But you will enjoy your aloneness because whether you like it or you don't like it, at this young age, it's a little difficult to understand this, whether you like it or you don't like it, within this body you're always alone, isn't it? Whether you do interaction or intercourse or whatever, still you're alone in this body. You are living on a daily basis as if you're forever. The fundamental awareness that this is mortal, if you come to terms with that one thing, there will be no insecurity because there's nothing to gain, nothing to lose in this life. You came with nothing, Whatever the hell is happening, you're on the profit side. Fear is always about the next moment, never about what is there right now. What will happen is the fear, isn't it? So fear is about something that is yet to be, or something that does not exist. Essentially, what you're saying is, my thoughts and my emotions are going out of control. So you're not having any problem with life or with the game. Your problem is, your imagination is going out of control. That's because people have taught you always to win the game. Please don't win the game, just hit the damn ball.
I have not given that freedom to anybody, that somebody can freak me, somebody can make me angry, somebody can make me happy, somebody can make me unhappy. These privileges I kept to myself. It's time you do that too. Because if somebody else can decide what can happen within you right now, isn't this the ultimate slavery? Huh? Isn't this? Someone else can decide what should happen within you. What happens around you, of course, so many people decide. What happens around us is not 100% ours. But what happens within me must be my making, isn't it?
Regarding dealing with unconscious people, and whether you yourself, maybe more so earlier in your life, whether you have felt lonely or isolated or frustrated in dealing with unconscious people, and what your approach was to that at different stages of your life.
Right, yes. Thank you. Well, that perhaps is the main challenge for everybody, because it is people mostly to who we get challenged by. Other sources of challenge are, of course, your physical body could present a challenge. There can be financial challenges. But a large part of challenges come through humans, because humans are difficult. Many humans are still very much trapped in ego. First part of your question, I was relatively isolated for many years of my life when, after the shift in consciousness, I carried on with my normal life. It had a certain momentum. I was still in the academic world. And then 3-4 years later, I had to go out of that, leave it behind completely. And then many years happened when I was not related to the world, to any of the usual channels. I had no particular job, no relationships, no close relationships. And I spent many days, weeks, months not seeing that many people. And gradually, people would come to me for advice. That happened gradually, it slowly grew through word of mouth. And then I had that kind of relationship with humans. But throughout, there's always challenges. Even if you live in relative isolation, you will come into contact with humans that are unconscious. So I think you need to welcome that, because it's those challenges force you to become more present. You remember I talked about the other day, if you want to make the body strong, you do exercise, you do physical exercise. And what is physical exercise? It's making life difficult for the body. That's a new way of looking at it, but if you look at it closely, you'll see it is true, because the body suddenly has to make an enormous effort. You're forcing the body, you're giving the body challenges that were not there before. Lift a heavy weight, run a mile, or whatever it is you're doing. And so then through being challenged beyond its comfort zone, the body gets stronger. And in the case of spiritual growth, we need all those unconscious humans to challenge us. Otherwise, the presence would not intensify and arise. So the first thing we need to do, and I learned that also, to regard these unconscious humans as blessings. So rather than believing you shouldn't be here, making my life difficult, regard the unconscious human as a necessary part of being here on this planet at this time. And so you can welcome them when they make life difficult for you. The important thing is, though, that humans, the unconscious, do not pull you into unconsciousness yourself. That is the challenge, the biggest challenge. And what I mentioned in the previous session also applies here. When you are being challenged by situations or people, up to a certain point of human development, the moment a situation gets challenging or you meet a challenging person, you become reactive and become more unconscious than you were before you were challenged. So you meet an angry person, you get angry yourself. You meet a confrontational person and you become even more confrontational, you're fighting. Then a certain thing happens, you reach that level beyond which the challenges make you more conscious. I think most of the people here will have reached a level where you may occasionally be pulled back, yes, but may have reached a level where from now on, when challenges come into your life through situations or people,
you become more present rather than be pulled into unconscious reaction. And that's your spiritual practice. That can be your main spiritual practice. So if you realize relationships are your spiritual practice, whether they are short relationships or at work or family relationships, if you can shift the way you look at relationships and then regard relationships as spiritual practice, it's much easier to deal with unconscious humans. And then the challenge is to stay present while they're being unconscious with you. I learned that early on when, after my shift in consciousness, my father's second wife was quite unconscious. And then not only unconscious, she developed a mental illness, but the mental illness was already hidden in the unconsciousness. The mental illness she developed was acute paranoia, and she was in a mental home for a while, then came back home. Whenever I visited them, once or twice, as I mentioned before, I stayed in hotels, but many times I went there, stayed with them, and I realized the moment I saw her, I would become intensely present. I would just go, and then she would start talking to me. Usually the stories would start with talking about her enemies, the people who were waiting down in the street and would follow her, people she would see in shops. And according to those stories, there must be at least 100 or 200 people whose main occupation is to follow her and make her life difficult. But that was the story, so I had to listen. The moment I arrived, she would tell me the latest events of what happened to all these people who were following her and doing things to sabotage her life, all fictitious. And immediately I went into very intense presence. And by the second day, the stories would subside a little bit. And by the third day, she wouldn't talk that much. And once or twice, it happened that I was not acutely present when she was talking, and immediately the old stories would come back up. She would even look at me suspiciously and say, why are you really here? What do you want from me? Well, so I noticed my consciousness had an effect on her state of consciousness. So that was particularly noticeable in that case. And she became more sane while I was there. And the moment I left, she went back into a complete unconsciousness. I had to become a nightmare before the awakening happened. If my life had not become a nightmare in my own mind, there would have been no awakening. So I'm very grateful that it became a nightmare. Because if you're in a nightmare, you don't want to carry on dreaming. You say, get me out of here. If you have a relatively pleasant dream with up and downs, I might as well stay here. I'm quite comfortable in this dream because here's another good meal waiting for me, and I'm going to eat this in my dream, and it tastes so good. I may be dreaming, but it tastes great. And then you're sick for a little while, but then there's something else. No problem. It's not. So your question is, how do you cope, or how do you explain?
How do you accept the suffering that awaits?
Accept.
And one small piece. I'm old enough that I will escape a lot of it, but I think about my children who will live in a world in which there will be a lot more limits and limitations.
Yes, that may well be the case.
So how do I help them?
You help them by teaching them what acceptance really means, by making them more conscious, and you do that by being conscious yourself. And occasionally they might be open to hearing something that you say to them occasionally. Then they will be ready then, and they will be able to use the suffering. I mean, the first half of the 20th century was a dreadful nightmare for millions upon millions of humans. When the First and Second World War happened, genocide happened on an enormous, unimaginary scale. Insanity, often you can't even imagine the insanity of it. And you ask, will we have to go through something like this again? Maybe yes. Teach them how to suffer, and by learning how to suffer, to go beyond suffering. That's what you can teach them. And then, so before you depart from this dimension, they will know, and then they are ready.
The hardest word that I'm having trouble with right now is responsibility. And I have a hunch that most of the things I consider responsibility are just my ego telling me things I have to do. But I also, when I think about the future of the earth and human evolution and stuff like that, sometimes I have big emotions of responsibility. So I'm just curious about the right relationship to the word responsibility.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's a strange word. It has been pointed out that if you look at the word, it seems to be talking about the ability to respond. So to take responsibility for, what is it that you can take responsibility for primarily? It's taking responsibility for your state of consciousness, which determines what kind of world you create. Because you are humanity. Humanity is an abstract concept, doesn't exist. Humanity is the human being. You are humanity. So for humanity to take responsibility, you need to take primarily responsibility for your state of consciousness, because only a diseased or dysfunctional state of consciousness produces a diseased and dysfunctional world out there. By world, I mean the human-made world that has been imposed on what's already there, the planet, which is potentially, of course, a paradise. The planet, pristine, unbelievable jewel, a being of great intelligence. We are not separate from it, but the being is going through a transitional process, and every transitional process is critical. It may or may not work, in which case the being will go some other way. But your state of consciousness determines what kind of world you create, what kind of action you take, and what consequences your actions have. So here, this is why my main work is to address the cause of dysfunction, which lies in the human mind, the dysfunction of the human mind, or as it is sometimes called in Zen, the sickness of the human mind. So, as I see it, and I don't think anybody who reads history can doubt it, there is a deep-seated dysfunction in humans, has been there for thousands of years. Dysfunction in humans has been there for thousands of years. And if there's no shift in that, then the dysfunction will destroy us. It probably won't destroy the planet because the planet has enormous resources, but it'll take a while for the planet to recover. All you have to do then is primarily take responsibility for your state of consciousness now. Now. And this is what the entire teaching really is about. What is my state of consciousness at this moment? Am I generating disturbance? Am I generating negativity? Am I generating conflict and suffering for myself and others? Am I generating inner pollution? Am I polluting the beautiful being that I am with continuous absurd movements of thought, producing negative emotions, producing an entire entity that is illusory, that I call the me? So to take responsibility, there needs to be just, of course, an awakening where you can say, okay, I will take responsibility now. Or know that there is even the possibility of taking responsibility. That's why you are so important. Anybody who realizes it, you are the beginning of the transformed world. I don't know who first coined the famous phrase. You hear it quite often these days. You need to be the change. The change that you want to see out there, you need to embody that. And that's not primarily what you do. There's something more primary than what you do. It's who you are. Who you are is your state of consciousness. Whatever you do flows out of that. So that's the primary is that. So the change is the transformed state of consciousness. Now, that is your responsibility. Anybody, once you've seen that, that's your responsibility. Now you know it. People who are not yet at that level don't realize it, and that's fine. You can't expect the whole world already to be at that stage. It's enough for you to take responsibility, knowing there's still a few million others who don't know that they can take responsibility because they live in such unconsciousness that they see the entire evil in others. What they see as evil is all in them. And they make half the world into their enemy. It's all out there. Those are required to take responsibility, you who are up to it. But even those who are totally unconscious still, on the one hand, they don't know what they're doing. Obviously, as Jesus said on the cross, they know not what they do. In other words, they are in the grip of unconscious forces, or unconscious mental emotional streams. They don't know what they do. They cannot be held responsible. And people say, well, they should be held responsible. No, they can't, they don't know what they do. However, the fact that they are not responsible because they can't be responsible does not mean that they do not suffer the consequences of their unconsciousness. So they generate suffering. And eventually, suffering is the fire in which the ego gets burned up, the collective ego and the personal ego. That's the long way, the slow way, the painful way. And then there's a shortcut, which is any spiritual teaching it cuts through that. The painful way, the long way of waking up, more and more suffering. The planet might not endure such a long learning process for humanity. So if the learning process of humanity does not become shortened, it is doubtful that it is doubtful that the planet can allow humanity to learn through further suffering for another 500 years, or even 200 years, or even 100 years. So that's, you're responsible for all that. Thank you.
Human beings seem to be at this constant state where they're thinking, when I have this amount of money, I will feel this way. When I have this relationship, I'll feel better. When I look like this, I'll feel like this. The thing that we all have to realize and to understand is whenever you amass that amount of money or manifest that body or that relationship, you're still going to feel the same way that you feel right now at this moment, just with that added outside physical benefits. What we have to do first is to go inside, to have our own inner spiritual journey, change the way we are on the inside in order for us to really enjoy the things that we attract, manifest, and attain on the outside.
You know, I was talking to a friend today about how humans are always chasing the tail of the dragon. They always want to accomplish more and more and more and more, and it's become an addiction. It's a form of running away from the gift of life, of just being. And if you think about it, and that's what dawned on me, it comes from a mentality of lack, to think that you have to fit everything into this life. That means that you're still governed by time. If instead of accomplishing physically all the time, you just took time to connect to your eternalness, you would feel the bliss and the ecstasy. And you wouldn't, think about it. If you're always busy accomplishing physically, when do you have time to develop your abilities? You don't. And I think that we've been programmed in this society to always do more. I say do more, but do spiritual work, not more physical work.
With today living in such a busy world, we cannot just depend on a morning meditation to actually get into that routine of balancing out our life and balancing out our energies. Because actually, the act of breath work, the ability to actually breathe in every moment, is how you stay balanced within the chaos. So imagine, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to take that breath in the morning and then go into the chaos and then be so consumed by that, instead of doing that, how about every single moment of every single day, we are practicing breath work to stay calm, have clarity, and know exactly where we're going in life.
You be like the sky. The sky is always the sky, whether there are clouds or no clouds. It doesn't complain. It doesn't say too many clouds today. It doesn't say too much thunder and lightning. I am not at my best at the moment. It doesn't matter. It does not try to stop the clouds from coming. It doesn't do anything. It is like the sky is a good metaphor for the beingness. Be like the sky. And your moods and feelings and thoughts and projections and memory and tendencies are just like clouds passing. The sky has no favorite clouds. Let everything come. Watch them go, they go.